All right. Hey, good morning, afternoon again, whatever it is, wherever you're at. So, this problem is one of the last problems we have, but it has some pieces we need to talk about, I think. One of the things I love to do is do what we call Monte Carlo simulations. In other words, we're trying something out and see what actually happens. So, this particular problem has a couple of things we need to look at, and so I'm going to fire up my good old notepad, since I don't seem to have one anywhere open among all the other 400 things I have open. So this one says that we have either a chance to win or lose on a roll of dice. So it's initially taking the initial steps of craps, and craps you win if you roll a 7, otherwise you lose. Now, real craps we also do an 11, and we can show you how to change that, but to meet the instructions here, we need to see if what's going to happen. So, if a 7, then you're going to increase your amount of money by $4. Otherwise, you're going to, you're going to decrease by only $1. Wow, what a deal. What a deal. So we need to think about how we're going to write this program. So we have a whole slew of little pieces to think about how we're going to do this. So first piece we need to think about, in my opinion, is we need to figure out how to roll the dice and get some values out of rolling a dice. So I'm going to use a couple of values in here. So I'm going to call it die 1 and die 2. And that way we're rolling these independently. Before I can use random numbers, I have to actually import a function. So I've got to import random. And I can then decide, hey, I need to roll these dice and I can get some numbers out of them. So I'm going to fire up Python somewhere here. And I'm going to bring it over here. And I'm going to do just that. I'm going to import random. That gives me my ability to roll dice. And I'm going to say die 1 equals 0. Die 2 equals 0. Just to do that little house cleaning. And then I want to simulate what happens if I roll that dice. So I'm going to say die 1 equals, and remember there's a couple different ways to do it, but this is probably, in my opinion, the easiest. So if I put the D in there, it'd be good. Rand integer, and then I get to pick a range. So I could say 1, 6. Well, that seems to coincide with what a dice looks like. And then I could do the same thing then to roll the second dice. So I'm going to just copy and paste it here and change it to die 2. So now I have my 2 dice. Now I need to think about what's going to happen. So I may even want to put a print statement in there and make sure it really does do what I think it is. So now I'm going to run this real quick. I've got to save it, called dice. All right. So, it ran over here. So, of course it did. All right. So I'm going to rerun that again. And notice, so I could do it a couple times and I could check. All right. So it seems to be functioning the way we think it does. We're getting 2 independent dice, each independent number. So now I need to change this a little bit and try to figure out if I can come up with a way to actually make money, or to do the betting piece with that. So this is all good. We know that we're going to use these pieces. We're probably not going to use this yet, but we might do that. So the other thing that it tells us to do here is we say we want to do, taking the amount of money that a player wants to put into the pot and using a random number generator, play the game until the pot is empty. At that point, the program should print the number of rolls it took to break the bank, so in other words, to get you broke, and the maximum amount of money in the pot. So what did it go up to? What did it go down to? So luckily, some of these things are a little easier than others to do. So we know we need something. So let's put in money. And we know we're going to get that. We can use an integer, I think, in here because we're just really counting that as a single dollar. We're not getting partial dollars in here. All right, so I'm going to do that as an input. Please input, gee, mini Christmas, input how much you can lose. Chunk. All right, so now we've got our money in there. That money actually forms the basis for how we can think about this kind of creating a loop. So in this case, I think we're going to create a while loop. So we could do a for loop, but I think a while loop makes more sense in this case. So I'm going to say, before we do anything else, I'm going to create, so this is my main gambling loop. And I am going to do something a little different. So I'm going to make sure I have both of them in there. Nope, I don't. That's why it's doing that weird. Okay, there we go. All right, so while. And so we know what we're really looking for is dollars. So while dollars greater than 0, we're going to continue to gamble. So now I'm going to move these back up. Hang on a second. Those need to go up here because we're just declaring them here in our variable declaration. So I can clean them out. All right, we know that we need, while dollars, we need to create a couple of dice. And so those are going to go in this indent here because they want to be at this indent for the while loop. So we need those to run. Well, we also need to keep track of how many times we run this. And so, makes sense, I'm just going to say count equals count plus 1. So every time this loop runs, it tells us how many times we've counted. We've added 1 to it. So I probably should up here, just for good giggles, count equals 0, so we make sure that we objectively set it. Because if we create this whole program to run multiple times, then we might need to do that. All right, so count equals count 1. So every time this rolls, it's going to keep track of how many times it rolls. So I could come back here and I could take this and I could say, all right, I'm going to put that so it's inside the loop and it prints what the die 1, die 2 is, and we could even say what's the count. So if I run this now, oh yes, we'll save it. So how much can you lose? 100. Dollars is not defined. So somewhere in there, I didn't do that right. Oh, hang on. That's what happens when you... So for money equals and money up there. So always make sure you have those aligned or it doesn't work and you look like an idiot. All right. So here we go. How much money can we lose? $100. It's rolling a lot. Counter keeps going up. But I'm going to do the Control-C because I don't want Cortana. Close. So it ran 1,600 times and it got all these dice numbers, but what did it do and why did it keep running? Well, we don't have any way to change that value of money. We counted up, but we didn't ever change that value of money. And so what we did over here, we said, well, if that value is equal to 7, then we know that we get 4 more dollars added in. So let's do this. So I'm going to go underneath here. And so now we need to figure out, and it's probably best as an if statement. So if the sum of die 1 plus die 2, so we could add them here, we could create a whole nother statement, is equal to 7, then we're going to do the positive action. We're going to increase the amount of money we have. So money equals money plus, and we said over there it was $4. You're going to add to it. Else, we're going to take away $1. Money equals money minus 1. All right, so now we can count how many times we run, and we can print this out, and this should end then afterwards. All right, so here we go. Couple of other things we got to do. Let's make sure this runs. See what happens. Run module, and I'm leaving those print statements in, so it's a good way to test what's going on. So I'm going to do $100. So notice that counter keeps running. Yeah, so 340 rolls, and we're broke with that model. Hey, that actually might work. So we're not displaying that we're doing the count. We're not displaying the total, but we're showing the dice. So, all right, so here we go. We need to do something a little different now. So I'm going to take that, and I'm going to put it outside of my loop here. So that loop will run, and so now I can print lowercase. It took you, and you can put count in there, rolls to go broke. Now, I would probably, notice down here where it's got these program outputs, you should probably do exactly what those are. It makes life a little easier, like I've showed you. So when you're doing this one, use the same verbiage. In fact, you can go over here and copy and paste that if you'd like to. So come back to me here. All right, come back to me, the right one. All right, so now at the end of this program, and I like to test these as I go. Instead of trying to write the whole thing, I want to test it and see if I can come up with a way to do it. So F5, I'm going to try $500. Bam. Now, here's what I think is interesting. Notice it just rolled that 2,415 times. You see how much quicker that is than when we printed each line? How much delay it is to print out? That's interesting because it rolled 2,400 times. And we could run it again if you wanted to. And we could put in the same amount. And this time it took 30 or 3,060 rolls. All right. So, little side note here. What if we wanted to do this a little differently? Now, the program here says for 7 only. But we know that in actual, that or die 1 plus die 2. Notice I'm enclosing these in parentheses just to make it easier to see here. So die 1 or die 2 equals 11. So notice we changed it just a little bit. So if you wanted to run this and practice it to see what would actually happen on that first roll, or a guesstimate of how many rolls, so we could run it and see what happens there. So same goal, we'll put 500 in because it's right there. So it came really close. So it didn't really change that a whole lot. So 2,700 rolls. So that's interesting because now it'll take either condition 7 or 11 and you'll get additional money. But notice it didn't really change the odds that much. So if you think about it from a mathematical viewpoint, how many different ways there are to roll a 7 and an 11, you can look at those odds and you can actually see how this is going to function. But, all right, we'll take this back out for now. I just wanted to show you can modify this. Try these kinds of things and see if it works. So You can try different odds, see what happens if it's even money, how quickly you would pass. So, anyway, this is our basic module. We have one other part that's kind of interesting in here. So, this one says, I also need to figure out the maximum amount of money in your pot. So this one's going to be a little different. So I'm just going to call this max money, and I'm going to set it equal to 0. So I've checked to see what my value is, and so I've either got money or lost money. So I'm going to try something, and I'm going to put in this. So if, here we say money is greater than max money, then I'm going to say max money is equal to money. So as I come through here, if I have more money than what I've said was my previous high of max money, then it's going to switch those around. So it's going to take the value in money and shove it into max money. Else, so because I don't really need to do an else statement here, I'm just simply trying to search for a max. But what I also might want to know, and I think it asks us to do that, is when should you have quit? And so what I also need then, max count, and at that same statement I'm going to say max count equals count. So now I know at what point I should have left. So in most cases, I'm at some point going to go above my initial value. This will tell me where that actually happens. So here's what I'd like to do, just so I can put it in here. So I'm going to go back to the indent of this, and I'm going to put a print statement in. And I'm going to print all kinds of stuff. So I want to see what die 1, die 2. I'm going to see what count is. So how many times we go through there. I'm going to print out dollar. Or did we use money? We used money. My head always wants to do that. And then I also want to write out and see where my max money value is. So as it scrolls through there, this is going to help me see, does my program actually work correctly? Okay, so I'm going to put in $100 this time, and I'm going to watch what happens. Max count not defined. Okay, a couple of things I need. Oh, there. I didn't even call it a 0. So one thing I probably should do in here is I probably need to actually say, because if I lose all the time, my max is never going to be equal to my original amount. So I actually also need to say max money is really equal to those money. So if I start out with 100 and I just lose continually, my max would never be that original value of 100. So I'm going to start with max money as 100. All right. Let's double check again. So we're going to go 100. So if we remember our order, we're in rolls over here. Now, it took 575 rolls to go broke. So, each dice roll, the count, so I'm just using that kind of as this test loop here. So die 1, die 2, count, and then money. So here's my value and my money going down. 19, 18, 17, 16, 12, 9, 8. So it just kept going down. And my max money, at some point, I got up here. So I didn't print the max count. But at some point in here, I got to $111. And then it went down from there, right? So I think I can get that to print out. Let's do it again. It took you blank count to go broke. You should have stopped at roll max count. All right, so see if we can get this to run again. Chunk. Now we're going to put in 100 again. So we'll scroll through, and we're just doing that. I'm going to take those out here in just a second. You'll see what happens. So 500, 600 rolls. Holy cow. In this case, 660 rolls to go broke. But look at that. We should have stopped at roll 5. All right, so roll 5 gave us our maximum value. So you can run these simulations over and over and over and over again. So you could even put this all inside another loop, and you could do this in, well, we'll not go there yet. All right, so I'm going to take out this so that it doesn't print. So what we're going to look for is it took you how many rolls to go broke. You should have stopped at a blank, max count. It took, so we have count, we have max count, and we also need max dollars, right? Yes. It appears to be. Close that. So we also need to print. Remember, I would grab those directly out of there. You had a maximum of and then that is our max money. So now when I run this, and you'll see how much quicker it runs because I took out printing every line. So now, dope, what did I do? Invalid syntax. Oh, hang on. Helps if I put the comment in the right spot while I'm looking here. All right, chunk. All right, so how much can you lose? Let's do our 500 again. Whoa, notice that it showed 1,700 rolls nearly instantly. Took you 1,730 rolls to go broke. You should have stopped at roll 0. You had a maximum of 500. All right, hang on a minute. So we might need to look and see because it looks like something there is wrong. You should have stopped at max count. That should be right. Max count equals count. Max money equals money. So I'm going to run this. I'm going to take this back out again. So look at this. So now I can see, hey, did I make a mistake somewhere in here? So, and I'm going to do it for 500 again. Just to check and make sure that it comes out the right answer. So it looks like in this case we're going to run a lot of iterations, and notice that how much slower it is. So if you think you're going to make money playing craps, this is a good way to show you that that's probably not going to happen. Holy cow. So 2,100 rolls. Should have stopped at roll 178, and we made it all the way up to $517. Yikes. This does not look like a good betting game because we don't know when to stop and we don't know when to walk away, and we would have made $17 on $500, but we continued to play it for 2,100 turns and we were broke. So I'm going to take that back out. Seems to work. We can try it with other numbers. So without that print statement, it'll actually go really, really quick. So I could even do 10,000. And it said, wow, we're going to roll, in this case, 58,475 rolls. And you went broke. And it actually got up, it doubled your money at one point at roll 50. Notice every time it gets that max, it's in that first area, which is interesting. Now, I will say this. So these numbers generated by Python, you wouldn't create and run a video game on them or a slot machine because they're not truly random. They're what we call pseudo-random. They're as close as we can possibly get with this hardware. There are better ways, so some of your games actually have a randomizer and things in them. So this is a take on it. Now, again, your print statements would have to be different, but this is kind of what I would do to try to check and see. It's also interesting to look at all kinds of other variations there. Like I said, you could add the what happens if I get 1 or a 7. Well, that could be part 1, and then you could actually create your own craps roller kind of game and see what would happen to your money over time, even if you had the entire game on there. And so you could start adding additional pieces and modules, but this is kind of the beginning. So hopefully this will help everybody.